Hello everyone, IAmCasualty. Today I'm going to be doing something different on this channel. I play League of Legends, but I also play Dungeons & Dragons. My main character in the game League of Legends is Brand, so as you can probably guess since you read the title, I'll be making a build for Brand in Dungeons & Dragons. So strap in, because this might be one of my longer videos. So I will get it out of the way now. If you enjoyed this video and want me to make this a series, be sure to leave a like, consider subscribing, and leave a comment telling me what League of Legends character you want to see. I've got another character in mind. Anyone who plays League of Legends knows him well. But allow me to give you some backstory on the character I'll be working on today, Brand. I'll be as brief as I can, but this will tie into your background and class. See if you can guess what Brand's class and background will be before I finish telling you about the lore. Before he became known as Brand, he was also known as Keegan Rode. Keegan was a man born an outsider. The little magic and herb craft his mother possessed allowed his mother and Keegan to live out on the fringes of a small coastal community named Riggins Reach in the Freljord. Even as a young boy, Keegan knew his father was a reaver and knew it was the reason by extension he and his mother were shunned from the village. Friends were few and far between for Keegan. The loneliness and resentment he would smolder and return into violent outbursts. This came to a head when his mother passed away. Even though they were outcasts, all of these people would still come to his mother for aid, but not one of them showed up to her funeral. After Keegan spread his mother's ashes, he would contain the vengeful rage no longer. He knew they wanted him to disappear in the cold air as well. Keegan would grant them their wishes, but not before the fires of vengeance claimed them first. As night fell upon Riggins Reach in the Freljord, Keegan snuck his way into the camp and set fire to the village before fleeing in the night to endure the blistering cold winds of the Freljord. The whole ordeal would leave him with scars and wounds that would never heal. Eventually, he found his way into a cave, holed up there, and waited to die. Death would not find Keegan, but instead another outsider did, a mage named Rise. Rise saw potential in Keegan, so he took him on as an apprentice. However, the struggles began as Keegan's natural wild magic frustrated them both, and Rise's requests for patience often fell on deaf ears. Teaching Keegan always took second priority to Rise because Rise had the world runes, powerful magical artifacts that are source of all the magic in the world. After tracking down a fragment with Rise, and against his warnings and teachings, Keegan chose to seize the rune for himself. Rise was forced to watch in failure as the flesh and blood of his apprentice were burned away by raw magic. Keegan's soul was consumed, and what was left standing in its place was no longer the bitter young man Rise found in the snow, or even the mage that he'd come to know as his friend, but instead a vengeful creature of fire and fury that now walked the mortal plane and would become known as Brand. Shortly after this transformation, Brand would attack Rise, and Rise would barely escape with his life. Now, as you can gather, Brand is a vengeful and hateful being, so at this point he would be chaotic evil, but I'm going to take creative liberties and write his backstory a bit differently to fit him in with the world of Dungeons & Dragons. The tragic backstory about his mother will still be there, but what happens after? Do you wish for him to wander until you find someone like Rise to learn from, or do you make it so he fleshes out a path of his own and teaches himself? That is up to you, but for our purposes, I'm going to say he ends up meeting Rise and learning from eventually, or another wizard. So for your background, the one that makes the most sense, in my opinion, is Outlander, but feel free to create a custom background if your DM allows it. We're going to set up our ability scores. First up for our ability scores, I know most people roll them at the table. In this case, I'll be using the point buy system, so if you do roll your statistics at your table, try to make sure you meet any multi-classing requirements that we will need for this build. You would take an 8 in strength. This will be your dump stat as a caster, as you can imagine, since you're not working very much. 14 to your dexterity, a 12 to your constitution, a 15 to your intelligence. We're going to be taking a 10 to our wisdom, a 13 to your charisma, and we'll be going over the pluses we're going to get from our race here shortly, because that's what we're getting into next. It's at this point, looking at some of these scores, you might be starting to gather what classes we're taking for our race. And you can take this two ways. You can have him be a human or variant human, which would make sense for his earlier background, as living with his mom. Or you could start as Fire Genasi. Now, you could argue this would only come to play after his transformation at a Brand, but like I said, the cool thing about this character and his lore is that you can create it in multiple ways and create the character at a point in his life that you think would matter, or that would matter for the level you're appropriately at. You can talk with your DM and see if you can have some sort of event happen where you find an artifact and it burns away your flesh, leaving as a Fire Genasi, which would be some cool character development in the game if you could convince your DM to let you do that. But for our purposes, I'm going to start as a variant human. This makes sense if you're starting at level 1, where Keegan would probably still be living with his mother, or shortly after he meets Rise, where he would just have his innate sorcerer abilities being taught by Rise, or another equivalent major wizard if you wish. As a variant human, you can take a feat. Now, multiple things fit thematically here, but for our purposes and the fact that Keegan will later on become Brand in one way or another, we're going to be taking the Elemental Adept feat here, and we're going to be selecting the Fire variant, which gives us the following benefits. Spells you cast ignore resistance to fire damage. In addition, when you roll for damage for a spell that deals fire damage, you can treat any one on the damage dice as a 2 instead. This is great because fire is one of the most common resistances in D&D. So if you roll 66 fire damage, you can do a minimum of 12 damage, because even if you roll all 1s, they would be 2s instead. And 2 times 6 is 12. You get the idea. This helps with your minimums and your damage, and will help especially with what we're going to be doing later on, and we'll get to that eventually. You also get a language and a skill proficiency of your choice, so pick your favorite here. Many things will fit here for skill proficiency, but I'm going to take medicine given the background with his mother using herbs and magic for healing, so maybe she tosses that to Keegan. As you may have picked up in the backstory, Rise had a tough time teaching Keegan due to his nascent wild magic. So at level 1, we will be a sorcerer. We're only going to be going here for a few levels, but the proficiency bonus to Constitution saving throws was too good to pass up, and I rarely see anyone play a wild magic sorcerer, so this felt too fitting to pass up on. We also get a proficiency to Charisma saving throws, but that's just kind of icing on the cake. For your bonuses to your racial scores, you get a +1 to 2 stats. We're going to put our +1 to Intelligence and a +1 to our Charisma, making them flat. So we'll have a 16 to Intelligence and a 14 to Charisma. As a sorcerer, your spellcasting ability is Charisma, which you currently have a +2 modifier to, which isn't terrible and should suffice for these early levels. You also get your Sorcerer's Origin here, and we're taking Wild Magic, which gives us the Tides of Chaos feature, which states, starting at level 1, you can manipulate the forces of chaos and chance to gain advantage on one attack roll, ability check, or saving throw. Once you do, you must finish a long rest before you can use this feature again. However, anytime before you regain the use of this feature, the DM can have you roll on the Wild Magic Surge table immediately after you cast a sorcerer spell or first level or higher. You then regain the use of this feature. When it comes to spells, the usual spell specs will do here: Shield, Absorb Elements, and Mage Armor are great options, so pick your favorites. But the ones I'd be sure to grab at this level are Burning Hands and Mage Armor. Our AC isn't that great, and we're going to be squishy in this build, so having that extra little bit is going to help greatly. For your cantrips, Firebolt will be your main damage cantrip, but for others, pick your favorites. Mage Hand is a personal favorite of mine, but the Message, Mending, and Mold Earth cantrips are useful options as well, providing some fun, but also some utility to your party. For starting equipment, you can take whatever you like. Be sure to get yourself a spellbook though at some point, because you will need it later. At level 2, we are Sorcerer level 2. Here you gain 2 Sorcerer points, and you'll gain more as you reach higher levels. We can't do much with them at this level, but at level 3, we are Sorcerer level 3. Here we get Meta Magic, which allows us to pick 2 options for the Meta Magic table. There are many options to choose from, but we are going to be picking up Transmuted Spell and Twin Spell. Twin Spell makes it so that when you cast a spell that targets only one creature and doesn't have a range of self, you can spend a number of sorcerer points equal to the spell's level to target a second creature in range with the same spell. 1 sorcerer point of the spell is a cantrip. To be eligible, a spell must be incapable of targeting more than one creature at the spell's current level. For example, Magic Missile and Scorching Ray wouldn't work, but Ray of Frost and Chromatic Orb would work. Transmuted Spell, on the other hand, makes it so when you cast a spell that deals a damage type from the following list: Acid, Cold, Fire, Lightning, Poison, or Thunder, 6 of them total, you can spend a sorcerer point to change it from one of those types to the other types, or to one of the other types. So for example, if I cast Cone of Cold, I can then spend a sorcerer point to make it Cone of Fire instead, which is some fun, cool flair that you get to do. And this doesn't specifically say casting a sorcerer spell. It says casting a spell. So this will work for our purposes of what we're going to be doing later on. We also get access to second level spells here. I'm going to say pick your favorites. Hold Person is a good pickup. If your opponent fails the check, they are paralyzed until they succeed on a check in a subsequent turn. Basically, this functions as your stun. We're not doing much with our concentration currently, so using this would help out your team and your party, giving some more much needed crowd control. However, this will be short-lived, because at level 4, we are going to be taking wizard levels, and we'll be wizard level 1. But before that, something I want to say is please take any spells you may want that may help your party, or ones that sound fun. Think of this video as just guidelines. We're going to be picking up just very few spells that kind of like fit the thematic of Brand. So any other spells that you want to take that would help your party or are utility oriented, if you want to take this like build and use it for a different character entirely instead of making Brand, feel free to. If you have any extra for spells, just take whatever you need. But keep in mind, if you're doing it for damage, take anything that has an element, so that way you can change it to fire or save those sorcerer points if it deals fire damage already, and cast it with Twin Spell if you desire. It's at this point that I think Keegan will be beginning to learn from Rise or whomever his teacher is. So we will be taking our wizard levels now. And at level 1, your spellcasting ability for the wizard is Intelligence, and it's our highest stat currently, which gives us a +3 to our spells. So our spells are getting some extra oomph. The other nice thing is that we get Arcane Recovery, which once per day when you finish a short rest, you can choose expended spell slots to recover, and those spell slots can be a combined level that is equal to or less than half your wizard level rounded up. and the slots cannot be 6th level or higher. So if we include our Font of Magic passive from Sorcerer, we have multiple ways of making sure we have enough spell slots to keep casting. Something I should actually really go over, because I don't think I mentioned it, is Font of Magic allows you to use your Sorcerer points to... you basically expend Sorcerer points to gain spell slots back. You're not going to be running out of mana anytime soon. You're not going to run out of spell slots. You'll be fine. I would pick a Firebolt here for your Wizard cantrip as well, because we do have better, we will, I should say, have better damage, but also have better chance to hit. And for other cantrips, the same thing applies as I did earlier. Pick your favorites or try to get some utility. I would possibly ask your DM if you can swap out some of those spells for other spells instead. That way you still get some utility from your Sorcerer, and you can maybe pick up some more control options or utility options from Sorcerer, and then use your Wizard instead as your now damaging subclass. And you'll see why as we get later into the levels. There are some arguments to be made to stick with Sorcerer for another level, because we're just about to get our ability score improvement or a feat, and it pains me to do, but I think this is our best jumping off point, because there's many things we get from Wizard, and we're just barely going to be able to attain 9th level Wizard spells, and we're only going to be able to get them if we leave Sorcerer now. So yes, for us, we are going Wizard. You can choose to do this differently, keep them as a Sorcerer, and with the lore and theme, you could argue that, but Wizard gives us some nice benefits, and in my opinion, benefits us greater for damage. However, if you would like to remain primarily Sorcerer, I would recommend you swap your ability scores around so you have a 13 to Intelligence and a 15 to Charisma, with the plus ones still being in those options, so that way your primary casting class has the better attributes. But for us, we're sticking with Wizard. At level 5, we would be a Wizard level 2. Here we get our subclass and our Arcane Tradition, and I think it fitting that we go with the Evocation School here. With that, you obtain the Evocation Savant, meaning it costs you half as much gold and time to copy an evocation spell to your spellbook. And you also get Sculpt spells here, which is a handy little thing so that when you're throwing out all this fire, your party members are less likely to get burned. Starting at 2nd level Evocation Wizard, you can create pockets of relative safety in your evocation spells. So when you cast an evocation spell that affects other creatures that you can see, you can choose a number of them equal to 1 plus your spell's level, and the chosen creatures automatically succeed on their saving throws, and they take no damage at all if they would normally take half damage if they succeeded. Meaning, if you drop a 3rd level Fireball, you can save up to 4 of your buddies from the Flames of Vengeance. From here, I'm going to speed it up a bit because this video is going to start getting long and the script is kind of big. At level 6, we be Wizard 3. Here we get level 2 spell slots, pick your favorites. However, here I would take Hold Person again for the better save DC. Messy Step is also nice, and Scorching Ray is another nice pickup. At level 7, we would be a Wizard level 4. Here we get our first ability score improvement. We're going to be bumping our intelligence up to an 18, giving us even better damage and save DCs with a +4 modifier. And I say better damage for a reason, because it will give us better damage later on. You'll see why. At level 8, we'd be Wizard level 5, and here we get access to 3rd level spells, and there's some really good options here. Counterspell, Dispel Magic, Haste, Slow, Fireball, obviously. So pick your favorites, but the main ones you should grab are Fireball for obvious reasons. But for some fun, you could grab Lightning Bolt here and use your Sorcerer points to turn it into a larger Fire Bolt, forming a line of 100 feet and long and 5 feet wide. Any targets in the way need to make a dex saving throw or take 8d6 lightning damage normally, but now, when you spend that Sorcerer point to change it to fire damage, it is now 8d6 fire damage, or half as much if they succeed, which is the same damage as Fireball, but you could have this in your back pocket from when people are lined up, or if they're grouped up in a tight ball, use Fireball instead. Use what's best to hit more targets. From here, I'm going to jump all the way to 11th level, at which point we would be all the way up to Wizard level 8. Along the way, we gained Potent Cantrip at 6th level, which means when we cast a damaging cantrip and a creature succeeds on the saving throw, they will still take half damage but suffer no additional effect. There is no save for Firebolt, you just roll to attack, but if you do take another damaging cantrip that has a saving throw, this will help ensure that it will still deal a bit of damage. We also got another ability score improvement, so with this we're going to be capping out our intelligence to 20, giving us a +5 modifier. And we've gotten access to 4th level spells. There are many different options here, but a few choice ones I'd pick up are Fire Shield and Wall of Fire, giving us some more defensive options and utility options. Skipping again straight to level 13, where we would be a Wizard level 10, and here's where we get a nice bump in damage due to Empowered Evocation. This is the feature I was saying that is going to give us more damage later on. Empowered Evocation lets us add our intelligence modifier to 1 damage roll of any evocation spell you cast. So for us, that would be 5 extra damage on each spell we cast. And by this point, we've also gotten access to 5th level spells, where you have to take Immolation. It requires concentration, but when cast with Twin Spell, you can fly the spell to 2 targets. The spell states you wreath 1 target in flames that you can see. The target must make a dexterity saving throw, which is currently an 18 for us, or they take 8d6 fire damage on a failed save or half on a successful save. However, if they fail, they're also burned for the spell's duration, which is a total of 1 minute or 10 rounds unless they save on a subsequent turn, if you haven't broken concentration. At the end of each of its turns, it repeats the saving throw, and when it fails again, it takes 4d6 damage every single time it fails until they succeed, at which point the spell ends on that target. The flames can also not be extinguished by non-magical means, and as a cool flavor tidbit, if the spell kills the target is turned to ash, or reduced to atoms, if you will. Thinking about it, that is 16d6 if they hit if both of the targets fail their checks, and a possible 80d6 if both targets fail every single saving throw every turn for the entire spell's duration, which is unlikely, but that's a lot of possible damage, which, if I'm doing my math correctly, is a total of 96d6 against 2 targets total, or 48d6 on 1 target, if I'm doing my math right. And then you also have the 5 extra damage for 1 of those targets, because of our empowered evocation feature, which lets us add our intelligence modifier to the damage roll. Also, remember that we ignore resistance to fire damage, and we can treat any 1s we roll on our damage dice for that spell as 2s instead. And this still leaves you open to cast Fireball or something else as long as it doesn't cost your concentration. However, if you want a control option instead, I would pick up Hold Monster here. It works just like Hold Person, except it can target creatures, and it does not work on undead. Wall of Force is another good option, control option as well. Now, this is around where most of the campaigns end, or they never even get to. And funny enough, this is our tipping point. We really start piling on damage now. We were doing decent damage before, but now we can really lay it on thick. The cool thing is that if you come up against an enemy and they have immunity to fire damage, you can use a sorcery point to swap your fire damage to something else from the list instead. You'll be doing a bit less damage, but some damage is better than no damage at all, and it's going to get even better. From here, we're going to skip straight ahead to level 17, where you would be a level 14 wizard. At this point, and along the way, you would have gotten another ability score improvement, or feat, and here you can do one of two things. You can take an ability score improvement and bump your dex to improve your AC or your constitution for more health, or you could even take the tough feat to gain more health that way, but I'm going to take the increase our dexterity and bump the modifier up to a +3, which is not great, but it's better than what it was before, which was a 12 without mage armor, and a 15 with mage armor, but now you're at 13 without, and a 16 with mage armor, so it's a nice increase. If you did opt for the tough feat, you would get 34 extra hit points right now at this level, so that's up to you. At Wizard level 14, we get Overchannel, which when we cast a spell between 1st and 5th level that deals damage, you can choose to deal the maximum amount of damage right away with that spell. The first time you do, you suffer no bad effect, but if you do it again before you finish a long rest, you take 2d12 necrotic damage for each level of the spell you cast, immediately after the spell is cast. The damage per spell level increases by 1d12 each time you use this thereafter. The second time you do it, it's 2d12 necrotic. The third time you do this, it'll be 3d12 necrotic, and it'll keep going up every single time you do this. And remember, it's that much d12 for per the spell's level. So if I used a fireball spell and use this feature for the third time, I would be taking 9d12 necrotic damage. And something to note is that a necrotic damage that you take from this feature ignores resistance and immunity, so be careful just how much you overchannel your spells. You would also have gotten access to 6th and 7th level spells by this point. For 6th level, I'd recommend Chain Lightning, which you can turn into fire damage instead, meaning you can hit up to 4 people and deal 10d8 fire damage to each of them. This fits thematically for the Pyroclasm ability that Brand has, or his ult, also known as his ultimate, with it bouncing to multiple targets. For the rest, just pick your favorites. And for the final time, we are skipping to level 20, at which point we will be a 17th level wizard where we gain another ability score improvement or feat, which you can use however you like it, because at this point, any boost to your survivability is going to be good, so I'm going to pick up the tough feat here, giving me a 40 hit point boost. Or you could bump your dexterity again, moving your AC to 17 with mage armor. And you have also gained access to 8th and 9th level spells. The no-brainer at this point is the Wish spell, which mainly relies on your DM, but its power cannot be ignored. Meteor Swarm is also a nice choice. Otherwise, there's some powerful options here, so pick your favorites. Final thoughts here, you are a full glass cannon with this ability, you do really good damage, and if you want, you can provide ample crowd control to enemies to help out your party. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope this helped you build your favorite characters in Dungeons & Dragons from League of Legends. Please let me know which character you'd like to see next in the comments below, and if you would, please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful day.